Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Good Enough Chats. My name's Dan Bowsher. I'm the host and producer of the show. And to be completely honest, this is a slightly weird one for me because in this episode, you're going to be hearing some of my story. I'll be honest, I've put this off for a little while because I felt a bit weird about being the subject of one of these. This has never been about my story. It's just been about the guest story. But I've been asked when I'm going to do it, and I want to show everybody else that I'm just as willing to come forward and share my story as they are. I appreciate every single person that's come forward to do that, and I want more people to keep coming forward in the future. So we've done it. We've recorded it. Huge thank you to Ben for offering to be my interviewer for this one. Really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Hi Dan, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Cannot complain. Um, been up to much so far today?
I've been out for a run. Um, I've got an anxious dog at the moment. So I've not been running much recently because I've been sleeping on the sofa to get the dog to go to sleep pretty much
Right.
every night for the last 2 months. So going out for a run, was a fruitful way to start the day. And it also helps that it's not blowing like a hurricane and pouring down with rain right now as well. So yeah, done that. Managed to get one coffee down my neck. Coffee number two is primed and ready to go, even though this is a bit of a surreal experience for me, if I'm completely honest.
Surreal for the good reasons, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yes. I mean that's a nice little segue. I guess it's surreal because the shoe's on the other foot. So do you want to start off by introducing yourself and
Yes.
revealing why this is surreal to people who might not be as familiar?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Dan Bowsher. I'm 46. I live in Newbury in England. And the reason that this is surreal is because Good Enough Chats is my sort of brainchild, my baby. And by the time this episode goes out, I would have interviewed 35 other guys to get their stories and to share those with the world. And uh, ever since I started doing this, people have been asking me, when are you going to do yours? When are you going to do yours? When are you going to do yours? So I've finally pulled up my big boy trousers and decided that now is the time to do it. Um, and I won't lie, it is weird. Normally, my job is to like tee up questions and then listen to people tell their stories. But yeah, this time it's my story, and I am absolutely paranoid about sounding like David Brent interviewing David Brent, if I'm completely honest.
Well, if it ever gets like that, I will just ask you to do the dance for those that end up watching this on YouTube, and it'll be more than worth it.
Yeah, you got my permission.
Lovely, lovely. Um, I guess this is slightly surreal for me as well. I mean, so I'm Ben. I am a Good Enough Chats alumnus, I guess. I was on a few series ago now, I believe. Um, and yeah, I work in comms, which I think is half the reason uh, why Dan has chosen me as the fortunate pal to interview him today. Um, so yeah, shall we kick things off?
Let's go for it.
Why not? Yeah, so why are you here today?
So the reason that I started Good Enough Chats in the first place was because when I found myself really struggling, um, I made a really important decision quite early on, which was when somebody asked me how I was doing, I would answer them really honestly.
Mhm.
Um, and when I did that, it completely changed the kind of conversations that I was having with people. But most importantly of all, it made me realize that I wasn't the only person that was struggling, the only person that was feeling like that. I wasn't isolated. Um, and I decided that I wanted to do something to help lift that stigma for men back then. And I've been acutely aware that ever since I started this thing, whilst my story has kind of naturally been woven into some of the conversations that I've had with people, I've never actually done it myself. I've never actually been the focus of an episode. Um, but I recognize that I have my own experiences that might be useful for other people to hear as well. And as is the kind of mantra of this platform, if me talking about this stuff helps one person to realize that they aren't on their own and that there are positive things that they can do to influence their own circumstances, help them kind of in their own well-being, then that's it. That's job done. So that bit kind of feels like almost sort of pre-rehearsed matter for me. I've kind of said it so many times elsewhere, but that is it. That's the genuine reason why this thing exists and why I'm here today doing mine.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned there your struggles. Are you comfortable revealing what those struggles were, or a particular um, low point that made you realize that you needed to make changes or have those more frank, open conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, very unprofessionally, I've just done a thing where I turned on the notifications instead of turning off the notifications. So I apologize for that background noise. Yeah, absolutely. So the kind of the origin point for my sort of lowest experiences was burnout. So I was working in corporate life. I was working in a field that was pretty sort of new and emerging, which is social media marketing when social media started. And the kind of the challenges of working in a high pressure corporate environment, dealing with something that's new that everybody else has a view on, that it's really hard to make any progress on. That kind of that weight got too much for me, and
Mm-hmm.
it was about probably 9 years into that it kind of reached a critical point where I broke down. Burnout, anxiety, depression, um, and the whole time that was happening, I I can't tell you how alone I felt, whilst also feeling like I was sending out some pretty clear signals into the cosmos that things were not right, but people weren't picking up on it at
Mm-hmm.
all. Um, and I literally broke down in the office. I was talking to a colleague of mine, um, and phoned the employee assistance program. Had a sort of a bit of fresh air, speaking to somebody there who basically said, "You know that you need to take a step back. That's the thing, the most important thing you can do right now." And I did, and that ended up with me being signed off for 3 months, doing a phased return, um, trying to make it work, and realizing that it just wasn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 9 months, I think, after I went back for the phase return that I handed my notice in, because I could feel that it was going back, to I was going back to exactly the place that I'd been 12 months earlier, and that wasn't going to help us at all.
Hmm.
Um, and the sort of the journey since then has been rocky, to say the least. And I'll happily share as much of that as I can throughout this conversation. But um, what what has been really interesting for me is quite early on in that experience, when I was talking to my psychotherapist, she identified that kind of the thing that was causing me the problems stemmed from clinical perfectionism. Um, and what that is, for people that don't know, is it's not just wanting things to be um, brilliant and good, the things that you do. It's actually it's debilitating, because I had this kind of combination of low self-esteem and clinical perfectionism, and they were feeding each other.
Hmm.
And that meant that I wouldn't even start doing something because I immediately thought I wasn't going to be brilliant at it straight away, which is the kind of most sort of self-defeating cycle that you can get yourself into.
Hmm.
Um, and that meant that I had to start learning, and this is where the name of this thing comes from. I had to start learning that good enough was good enough.
Hmm.
Um, and that was really hard because my brain was programmed 100% to spot every gap and criticize everything and everything I ever did, whilst being like perfectly sort of empathetic to other people, and say it's okay for you guys to get things wrong or to not get it 100%. Um, but being incredibly harsh on myself. So when I was in an environment which expected excellence and expected long hours, and let's just say had some people in that environment whose attitude was good enough is not good enough,
Hmm.
it's not hard to see why I got where I got to.
Yeah.
And when I left, although I hadn't quite returned to the point that I'd been at 12 months earlier, I wasn't far away from it. My confidence was absolutely shot
Hmm.
bottom, and I left out of necessity. I didn't leave because I had a plan. Um, I left because I really couldn't be there anymore.
Hmm.
And whilst I've absolutely no regrets about doing that, uh, it's fair to say that what has followed on from that has not been plain sailing. Um, but there has been an awful lot of um, personal development, learning, mistakes, false dawns, uh, but general sort of trend of recovery
Hmm.
that's underpinned that in what is now nearly 7 years
Wow.
since.
Well, I think that's the important thing, isn't it? I mean, I wanted to say it might sound odd, but like congratulations just for spotting it in the first place. Like the amount of people that I've worked with over the years that I think just work under the assumption that you're not meant to enjoy work. And if you don't enjoy work, then all these things that I feel about work are valid and everyone's feeling them. But there's a difference between, oh, if I could, I'd stay in bed today and chuck on a Blu-ray or read a book or something. I'd rather not go to work versus what you've just described. So to take active, positive steps to look after yourself is a big positive step. So congratulations for that. Um, and I guess, I mean, there may well be untold people that are working through similar and just don't even know it. That there's some people that I can think of that, I mean, I'm in my mid 30s. There are people that I've worked with that are slightly younger than me that are probably have had twice as many roles in PR than I have. And part of me wonders if that's because they're hitting that plateau of this isn't, they just, I don't know if they think the job just isn't right for them or if they're getting to a phase where they're like close to where you were, like, this just doesn't work for me. I'm getting to the point where I almost hate what I'm doing, etc.
Yeah.
And then they're just like jumping to try and find something else. And it's like moving that problem down the line a bit, whereas you've taken a stand and focused on yourself.
Yeah, but it took me nearly a decade
Yes, yeah, yeah. I mean,
for that, and I guess what I wasn't really good at listening to what my body was telling me for a
mhm,
lot of that time, and it had to get to that sort of critical point before I would actually just go, oh, well, actually, it's not a case of not listening. It's I can't do anything else. Like I
yeah.
literally, I slept for the first 2 weeks that I was signed off. I couldn't stay awake for much longer than an hour without just falling asleep on the sofa or going back to bed. And that
Hmm.
was my body's way of saying, you need a rest, mate.
Yeah.
Um, so you're right. I have definitely taken positive steps, but it is really hard sometimes to realize what then becomes a really obvious indicator
Hmm.
in the middle of it. Um, and if anybody is kind of not really sure right now about whether or not they are in the middle of that, I think the fact that you're asking that question of yourself is probably a pretty good indication.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's I appreciate what you're saying, and I don't want to sort of dismiss that at all because it's an important part of the sort of the journey that I've been on to recognize the progress.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, when I think about where I was in the mire, what would I have needed to hear from somebody that would have caused me to kind of at least consider the possibility that this wasn't okay?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to put yourself in that position.
Yeah. And I guess with perfectionist mantra that you well, not mantra, but what you were talking about before, I guess even something like your boss, owner of the business or whomever, saying, like, almost like sending you home, that may not have been enough. That may have, that could have ended up just going, well, why do you feel like I have to? Am I not, not to steal the name of the show, but am I not good enough to be here? And even that might not have worked. I mean, you're right. It's, you have to find whatever that turning point is and listen to it. And hopefully for everyone listening, watching, etc., that turning point isn't the point you got to. Because obviously we'd love people not to get to that point because it
Yeah,
sounds um, very debilitating, obviously. Um, but yeah, I guess as you mentioned, you're making progress. You've made great progress, ups and downs on the way. But I think the way I've always looked at it is as long as you're taking more forward steps than backward ones, or even sideways ones, then you're moving in the right direction, aren't you?
yeah, and sometimes I'll be honest, sometimes it's a lot easier to see that progress
Hmm.
than another at times. Like, you're say your I this year, for example, um, I've been really struggling this year to see progress and to get motivation and to kind of get the kind of clarity of mind that I would like to have to be able to move forward with stuff. And that's very frustrating because it's like it's like a cyclical thing.
Hmm.
And that when you recognize that it's cyclical, part of the challenge with that is that you know that even when you're feeling okay, that you're not going to maintain that.
Hmm.
Um, but I'll come on to there's a specific thing that I'll talk about later that may have helped me to potentially break that cycle that I've kind of experienced in the last couple of months. But yeah, when you feel crap and you know it's a cycle, it can be very frustrating
Hmm.
knowing the inevitability of it coming back again down the line and the impact that that has on your energy, your ability to engage with the world. Yeah, that's knowing that there's a cycle that in itself is quite draining.
Hmm.
Um, but like I say, I may have made a bit of a breakthrough on that. I'll talk about in a bit.
Okay. Um, well, I guess as you mentioned, the cycle. Um, I guess where are you on that cycle now? How has your past week been?
Um, Tiring. Um, I mentioned earlier the dog.
Hmm.
The dog has become increasingly anxious and makes it impossible for us to sleep unless one of us is down on the sofa with him.
Hmm.
It's been going on since the start of August. So he's had a particularly bad week this week where he's
Hmm.
got very disrupted sleep. So my wife and I are feeling pretty knackered. Um, so that's been a challenge. Obviously, we're kind of entering into that time of year at the moment where the days are shorter, darker, the weather
Hmm.
bloody awful. Today is an exception, thankfully. Um, so that's been a bit grim. I've not done that running as much because of the weather, because of the dog, because of feeling tired.
Hmm.
Um, but on the flip side of that, I have managed to keep going. There are things that I wanted to do to kind of show myself that I can kind of build some momentum that I've carried on doing despite the fact I've been feeling physically and mentally destroyed acutely over the last week or so. So that I guess that's the sort of flip side of it. This interview, this conversation,
Hmm.
this is happening despite that. So that to me is a point of progress because it would have been very easy for me to say, actually, I don't really feel like it at the moment. And I would have done that in the past, but I haven't done that. So I recognize that as progress. Um, the the other thing, and this does relate to good enough chats, is I've been procrastinating about um, a version of good enough chats, which is for businesses. I've sat on that for months and I've been really reluctant to actually put it out the door.
Hmm.
But I did do it. I bit the bullet. It's out there. And now I'm having some really interesting conversations with people that might want to use it. So I'm kind of, I would say, struggling, but still able to see progress. And that in itself is progress.
Hmm.
Um, and we're just coming up to half term. There are no, I coach my daughter's football team. There are no games over half term. So I've got a couple of weekends where I don't have to stand on the sidelines getting blown around all over the place and saturated. So that's good.
Yep.
Um, and I'm looking towards the future as well. Um, so yeah, I would say despite those difficulties, still broadly positive, still future facing, still good.
Nice. And when you look into the future, are there any like big, are you the kind of person that has like big milestones that helps drive you forward, or is it the just take one day as it comes?
See, that's interesting. If we have this conversation again in 6 months' time, the answer might be different here. But part of the challenge that with clinical perfectionism is the tendency to set completely unrealistic targets that then you don't meet, and then you
Mhm.
end up beating yourself up because you haven't met those targets. So I've always avoided setting sort of big milestone targets because I don't want to have that adverse reaction to it.
Mhm.
That said, I do. I have less of a kind of it's a less tangible thing to the outside world, but I guess my targets are more about um, how much energy do I have and how long have I managed to sustain that feeling of energy.
Mhm.
Um, because I'm very good at focusing on things in really short bursts and then forgetting that I've done that work and then losing my motivation.
Mhm.
The kind of the big challenge for me right now is what do I need to do to give myself the best chance of building and sustaining momentum?
Mhm.
And that's a feeling rather than a thing. But I'm working on lots of little things like uh, making sure I've got dates that are quite far out to go and see mates,
Mhm.
to visit people that I wouldn't have seen. Um, Trying to get gigs in the diary months ahead of time, so you know that that thing is coming. Like the furthest one out I've got is in March, and that's been in the diary for a couple of months already, and I'm really looking forward to that. Um, Making sure that despite the last week's hindered efforts, I'm getting out and I'm running regularly. Those kind of things, because I find that if that kind of stuff is on track, then the other stuff just happens, as opposed to really kind of focusing on making that stuff happen, which is counterproductive for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Um, I know I've got some big stresses coming next year, and all I've done is book gigs in. Not to like downplay what's coming. Or I mean, with me and my partner are trying to buy a house, basically, and I know that like I should be saving all the money in the world, and but I mean, this isn't a plug. I've recently written a blog on this, but I've realized that one of the few like I need to give myself a luxury, otherwise I will just go stir crazy,
Yeah,
and that's gigs. I find I can just be myself whether I'm with friends or not when I'm at live music shows. So yeah, I'm exactly the same. I think my I've got one in July next year already, and that'd be like my fourth one of next year. So I would have like planned out up to like next summer. Um, so yeah, I feel you.
yeah. Well, also there's like the surprise thing. So my wife's kind of going through a bit of a revitalization of her interest in 90s indie, right?
Hmm.
So she wanted to go and watch. Ash was supporting the Darkness earlier in the year, and neither of us are that bothered about the Darkness, but she really likes Ash, so we went
Hmm.
to watch that gig. And I thought for her birthday, I thought, well, what other bands are coming up that she hasn't seen for ages or whatever? Dodgy, remember Dodgy? Uh, a couple of weekends ago, they played a venue in Reading. It was on a Sunday night, and both of us were knackered. Neither of us were massive Dodgy fans, but so we kind of trundled along, thinking, well, we've got the tickets.
Hmm.
Brilliant gig.
Yeah.
Honestly, even if you don't have any of the albums, you're not a fan, go and watch Dodgy live. They're brilliant. They've got such an amazing energy. And the weird thing is, we actually bumped into this guy came and tapped my wife on the shoulder and went, "Helen." Yeah. Oh my God. It was a guy that she grew up living next to. Just
Wow.
he went, "I thought it was you." And she went, "Yeah." They hadn't seen each other for 30 years. So
Blimey.
so they ended up chatting away. I got to meet him. We watched this gig and came out of it going, yeah, it was a Sunday evening. We were both absolutely shocked, and we had zero expectations, but that was actually really, really good fun to do that. So yeah, you never know. Always, I'm saying this to remind myself as much as anything else, but saying yes to stuff
Hmm.
Very rarely turns out to be a bad idea, especially if you were thinking of saying no.
Hmm.
Um, and we were thinking about not going to that, and I'm so glad we did. Um, so yeah, that's the restorative power of live music.
Nice. We'll edit in a advert for Dodgy Now sponsorship and just send them an invoice.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. Um, Lovely. I guess next question is on my mind is how your relationship with mental health has evolved over the years.
Yeah. So this one, obviously, I've talked about the the kind of the big flashpoint for me, and I've alluded to the fact that the sort of the journey in between was has been a bit rocky. So I would say it's probably the last 7 years where the most development has taken place. Um, so for context, after I left corporate life, I went into freelancing, and what I wanted from that initially was to have control over my workload and my environment, because I didn't feel like I had control over either of those things, and they were definitely a source of stress, long hours in corporate world. So not long after I went freelance, some friends said to me, "Well, can we build you an office in the garden?" And I said, "Yes, that would be
Mhm.
lovely. This is the office that they built." And because I wanted to be in control, a couple of things happened. Number one, I withdrew from work social stuff. Um, I've never felt comfortable networking. I really didn't want to be surrounded by lots of other people.
Mhm.
Um, so it kind of suited me to do that. But the other thing that happened was because I was still very much dealing with the legacy of burnout. I was absolutely scared shitless of the idea that I would be overburdened and too busy.
Mhm.
So I did a series of things that would basically limit how much work I would need to do, including being very narrow in my sort of field of expertise, um, very quickly talking myself out of whether or not I was capable of doing certain jobs that came up. Um, Even at one point, and I think this was probably a smart move at the time, I rather than planning how much time I had or how many hours I would need to spend on the job, I started to traffic light it based on relative stress at that time. So I would plan my whether or not I could take capacity. It was irrelevant based on how many hours I could work. It was what stage are other projects at, and how
Mhm.
stressful is that going to make it for me. Again, I think it was probably the right thing to do for a short period of time, but I basically spent years being scared of being too busy and therefore not building up a pipeline. And I got lucky in the first few years because um, I was working a lot with somebody else who was doing all of the new business stuff,
Mhm.
and I was delivering on the projects that they brought in, and it worked really well. But I had none of my own pipeline because I was too scared of burning out again.
Mhm.
Um, and I'd say that worked well for me for a few years. So if you, when I fast forward to say, particularly the last 18 months, that work, that source of work hasn't been as fruitful as it was, but I've had
Mhm.
no pipeline. But I've also been in this sort of vicious cycle of, well, you're not doing much work because you're not very good at that job,
Right.
which means that I've started to dislike the work, which
Hmm.
means that I haven't had the inclination to try and get more work. And before you know it, in the last 2 years, HMRC rebates have basically got us out of jail twice, um, because my head was still in the you can't be too busy.
Hmm.
So you need to make sure that you don't do too much to get too much work in. And then all of a sudden, no work, no money. Um, and these are the kind of things that I don't think are necessarily talked about as much in that burnout experience. Um, I've been scared of work ever since,
Hmm.
and that has eaten into my confidence. It's eaten into my finances. It's affected everything. It's absolutely affected everything. Um, and when you're already kind of predisposed to being self-critical, it's not just it doesn't just stop. It escalates and escalates, and then I find I have to I get to a certain point where I feel strong enough to try and stop that from happening. But
Hmm.
sometimes it can be months and months before I feel like I've got the ability to change that,
Hmm.
um, and that's really tough. Um, I guess another specific way that manifests itself is, um, I mentioned earlier, I'm really good at having sort of short bursts of effectiveness. Well, in those short bursts, I've realized that I needed to generate more income. So I've turned to, well, how do I talk about what I do? What services do I offer? And I've developed new approaches to them. And then I've just sort of sat them over on one side on a little pile that's grown and grown and grown of stuff that I've done all the thinking on, all the development on. I've even spoken to trusted people and we're going, what do you think about this? And they've gone, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea.
Hmm.
And they've just stayed there because something has stopped me from being able to actually put it out into the world, which is ridiculous. You know you need to generate money, you need to generate income, you need to pay the mortgage, right? And I know that, and I also know that I'm sitting on this stuff and I'm not putting it out there, and I am doing the virtual equivalent of punching myself in the face over and over again by not doing it. But something has been stopping me from doing
Hmm.
that consistently. Put that down to I put that down to this kind of almost like and I don't want to use this term lightly, but I feel like my experience of burnout, post burnout, is on some level like a PTSD thing, because I still haven't been able to step over the threshold of my former employer.
Hmm.
I have to drive past the offices regularly. It took me 5 years before I could do that without going, ugh, shuddering. So there's an element of that my that's influenced my psyche
Hmm.
pretty fundamentally. And there is no amount when I feel like that, there is no amount of encouragement, support from other people that makes any difference long term. It's something inside of me that is just not hearing it, not able to hear it at all.
Hmm.
Um, and this is the thing that I mentioned earlier that I wanted to talk about, um, which is that cycle comes back again and again and again. It's very frustrating. Been caught in this sort of cycle for what, 18 months or so, knowing that there isn't a lot of work that's coming in, knowing that I can develop new stuff, but not pushing stuff out of the door, getting increasingly frustrated with myself, and feeling a lot like things, like it's all happening to me, and
Mhm.
I don't have the control to do anything about it. So I took a choice. I made a decision, um, probably about 6 weeks ago. This is how new all this is. That I needed to try doing things differently, or I needed to listen to different perspectives, because I've been very up for having open conversations with friends. I've been very up for, I've had therapy for years, coaching. None of it's working to change this kind of fundamental thing.
Mhm.
So I thought, listen to other voices, people that you haven't spoken to before, people that have got ideas that might make you feel a bit uncomfortable to start off with. And I just so happened to have that conversation with somebody. Um, and because both of us were in a bit of a bit of a bind financially, we agreed to do a bit of a skill swap. And what this guy does is he focuses on not helping you to work out what you need to do or why you're going to do it, but focusing on how you show up. And I went on to this. He invited me onto this sprint session that he'd done. He'd organised, and it was with, I think, 5 other people. And during this conversation, this sprint session, I found myself having a really adverse reaction to it. I found myself getting angry, frustrated,
Mhm.
like a wall shot up or a fog descended. I couldn't engage with it. I didn't think it was working for me. It wasn't what I wanted. No reflection on him. It was just my kind of gut reaction to it, right? And he clocked this. And at the end of the session, he said, "Can I stay on the line?" And we had a chat, and he started to take me through this exercise, which I won't go into loads of detail about, but it involved something that I would normally go, "Well, that's a bit woo woo. I can't engage with that." But it involved visualizing how I was feeling at that
Mhm.
moment in time. And it was really effective. And the upshot of it was, it made me realize that my reaction in that situation was because I didn't know what I needed to do next. And I was uncertain about what was going to happen as a consequence. And it was like a defense mechanism coming up to protect me. And I sat with that for a couple of days. His suggestion, and I'm thinking, well, what do I do with this now?
Mhm.
How does this help me? And after a couple of days, I suddenly had this realization that the feeling that I'd had, that kind of defense mechanism kicking in, was very similar to the feelings that I had when I was a little kid. And to paraphrase, I was a little shit. I was like a little volcano of rage.
Mhm.
Would It would take nothing to trigger me, and I would shout and scream at my parents, and I was an absolute knobhead. Um, but when I got to 12, 13, I suddenly stopped it. So I'd matured enough to kind of control the emotion. Except the problem is that that was as far as I took it.
Hmm.
And all I was doing was basically going, push that down, push that down. You're mature now, you're an adult. This doesn't serve you really well.
Hmm.
And suddenly seeing the link between that feeling and the feeling that I'd had in that conversation, that kind of call a few days earlier, and then thinking, well, hang on a minute, every single time I feel under threat, that's the reaction that I have,
Hmm.
was an absolute game changer for me, because it made me realize that that response is serving a function to protect me, that it stems from feeling uncertain and threatened, and that it's been leading my reaction to so many things in my working life and beyond, that if there was some way that I could go, I say, it's all right, don't worry, I've got this, and I'll show you that it's going to be okay, that could be an absolute game changer for me.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a lot more that kind of went into the conversations and the kind of the deep thinking that's triggered by something like that. But I genuinely believe that within the last 3 weeks, I may have had a proper transformational moment. Now, the question for me is always going to be, but can you maintain it?
Hmm.
And I'm 3 weeks in, and I have. If I
Nice.
get to January and I've still maintained it, that will be unprecedented territory. But the difference is, I actually believe I will. And I've never felt like that
Hmm.
about any of the other conversations that I've had in the past, people trying to help me work through stuff. Never felt like that.
Hmm.
I've always felt like, well, hopefully that'll keep going. Whereas now I'm thinking, well, this is completely in my control to do it. And they say, like, one of the first signs of madness is talking to yourself. I'm literally talking to myself. Like when I'm walking the dog in the morning, or when I'm going for a run, and I'm now able to spot when the sort of the negative thoughts are coming in,
Hmm.
and hold them off and go, right, hang on a minute. Let's just have a talk about what you've done today already,
Hmm.
what you know you're going to do today, what you've done in this week, and what you're planning to do next week.
Hmm.
And I've found that to be a profoundly powerful thought process to engage with.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm a cynical bastard. And I realize that this is going to sound to other cynical bastards like a load of mumbo jumbo, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like, it feels almost like the start of a new version of me that
Hmm.
gets shit done, that doesn't let the voices stop him and basically paralyze him.
Hmm.
And that's why I'm kind of, that's why I'm sort of future facing at the moment, because I know I'm finally trying to do stuff to make the future happen, as opposed to just getting completely sideswiped by the present or the past.
Yep.
And that's huge. Um, and that's probably, that's something that I now realize that I've been sort of dealing with my entire life. It might be the reason that the clinical perfectionism is a thing, or
Hmm.
it could be that it's the other way around. I don't know. I almost don't care because I'm done with the analysis now. I don't feel like I need to do any more of the working out. I just need to do the doing
Mhm.
and feel the benefit of it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, I can't say that I fully understand. I could lie and say I do. I mean, I feel like everybody listening will take something from what you've just said, but nobody can fully understand what anyone else is going through unless they somehow live through or wear their shoes or what have you. But it makes complete sense to me. I think, I mean, my next question was going to be a light bulb moment, but it sounds like we've just talked about it and you've had it like in the last 6 weeks, which is amazing news.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, there have been other light bulb moments along the way. Probably, so probably the two things would be uh, medication and therapy.
Mhm.
Um, so I originally I first went on to antidepressants when I was, I think, in my second year at uni. Um, and I was really struggling then. And I wasn't I was on them, but I wasn't ready for them.
Mhm.
I remember I can't remember what I was on, but the first round of antidepressants I was on zombified me. Um, and I needed to get off those pretty quick. But then the second ones, I didn't really, I didn't double it with therapy. I just did the meds, and because of that, they could only do so much for me. But when I burned out, I was ready to do both this time round. 100%. I went on the meds. I went into psychotherapy. I stayed in therapy for quite a long time. And I came off the meds probably after, it's either 2 or 3 years. Um, because I was still struggling with stuff and I didn't really feel like the meds were helping as much as the therapy was. So I spoke to the doctor and decided to come off them and haven't been on them since. But the willing the willingness to actually listen to what the professionals say and not have a kind of a stigma attached to, oh, I can't be on those drugs. That'll be,
Mhm.
I'll be a lunatic if I have those drugs. And people need to understand they're there because they serve a purpose, and there is no shame in in having medication to support you, and no shame in having therapy either.
No. Yeah, I have always thought that. Like people openly talk about, oh, I take these vitamins or what have you. But there still seems to be a taboo or stigma, as you say, around any form of antidepressants or any form of medication that helps better someone's mental health. And I've never understood why. It
No.
should be just as um just as acceptable as any other form of medication, but there's still this taboo around them, which makes zero sense at all because it just then stigmatize it, and then that makes the person that's taken them feel worse. And the last set of people you want to make feel worse are people that are depressed, because then they start questioning why they're taking them, and then they keep going round and round in these cycles again.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely something that needs to change.
Yeah. It's amazing to me that we still have to have those conversations, but it just shows,
Mhm.
like, I think there's a lot of denial, particularly among men, that they've got a problem, let alone
Mhm.
they need medication to
Yep.
help them with it. And I also think we don't talk about it openly enough to normalize
Mhm.
it. Um, and that's a big role of conversations like this, is to just put it out there and go, this stuff is normal. A lot of people are affected by this. And maybe
Mhm.
actually the problem is not the people. Maybe the problem is the way that we collectively, as a society, function that is causing so many people to feel like this. But this is not a conversation to solve that. Um, but there's definitely something in that. Other civilizations, other societies, they don't have these problems, or if they do, they deal with them in a far more constructive and supportive manner. And on that point, the therapy question, I had a really specific light bulb moment around therapy, which is once you kind of get over the hurdle of you're talking to a stranger about your deepest, darkest experiences and truths. One of the things that I was doing a lot, and I'd done since I was a kid, was chew my fingernails. And this was an anxiety thing, I would chew my fingernails until they bled. I would peel layers off the nails, so it was painful to hold a pencil or a pen. And it was an anxiety thing. And I reflected on this when in meetings at work, again, in my mid to late 30s. I'd go into a meeting room. I would be preoccupied by the fact that I knew that my nails were a mess, a bloody mess sometimes. So I would go and get plasters from the medical kit to cover them up. And then I hide my hands under the desk so that other people couldn't see it. And if I needed to bring my hands up to make a point, I would move my hands around quickly because I'm thinking other people are going to see what I've done to my fingernails. Meant that I would go into meetings feeling like I didn't belong there, like I wasn't contributing to it, and feel totally disengaged. And that the cycle then escalates again and again and again. It gets worse. And my therapist did some cognitive behavioral therapy with me, and she basically said, what would happen if you didn't bite your fingernails? So, well, then I wouldn't be thinking about my fingernails. And then she said, and how would that affect how you behaved in the meeting? I'd say, well, if I wasn't thinking about my fingernails, then I wouldn't be hiding my hands. And what would that then mean? So, well, if I wasn't hiding my hands and thinking about that, then I would be more engaged with the conversations that were happening in the room. And what would happen then? So, well, then I'd feel like I had more of a contribution to make. So, and what would happen then? It just and on and on and on and on. And so you get to the point where you go, Jesus Christ, if I stop ruining my fingernails, I could actually work in a meeting and offer some valid contributions. And I walked out of that room and I've never bitten my fingernails since. And that was 8 years ago. That was, no. Yeah, that was 8 years ago. That was when I was signed off initially. And I was like, that's mad. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy isn't going to fix all ills, but it was a really clear illustration to me of how the way you think, the thought patterns that you have established for yourself go unchallenged and cause you so much pain and difficulty until they get reframed like that. And you go, oh, it's obvious now you say that. And the physical change is that these don't get bitten anymore. I mean, I still can't tolerate having long fingernails, so I just clip them all the time. But I don't bite them. And I don't have bloody fingers. And I don't have to wear plasters on them. It's an absolute game changer for me. I can't honestly say that I've used those techniques in any other context for me since then, but I wanted to talk about it because something that someone else does without necessarily thinking about it is probably going to be causing them a lot more difficulty than it should do. And if they tried something like CBT, who's to say what that could do to support them?
Yeah.
Have you ever done any CBT or any therapy at all?
No, no. Had that one of the benefits through the agency I work for. We have a like a online I guess they are a form of therapist, but and you can talk to them about anything. It's all
Yeah.
completely off the record. Um, it's very much. So I had some conversations with them, but maybe like three or four, and then found that the style that was going down wasn't really working for me. It was one of those where you go in and you'd have like a 45 minute to an hour session, and you'd bring a problem
Mm,
to discuss, and then you would basically be forced to come up with all the answers. Whereas I would probably, if I was going to go into like a therapy type situation, I'd want to have more of like a two-way street discussion
mm,
because, and maybe this is my cynical bastard, if I had the answers already, I wouldn't need to have that chat with the person.
mm,
That's kind of how it was framed. Like I'd say, I won't go into what the discussions were, obviously, but I have problem X, and then the first question would be, how can we overcome this then? And then if I knew that, I I wouldn't be here
that,
because
yeah, that,
I was talking almost solely about work stuff.
yeah.
Like I've got a challenge with like X client, or I've got a challenge with managing this, and this. Um, and then yeah, but like right, okay, well, what do you want to get at today? Not have that problem anymore, right? Okay, how can we get there? That's kind of what I was hoping you could help me with,
Mm.
but it just didn't work for me. But on like more of the personal stuff that we discussed during my episode, I haven't really. I've been dealing with that myself, and CBT may be something that I look into at some point because I mean, hearing how it's helped you, it might be something that helps me. But no, at the minute I haven't.
I can recommend it. I definitely, it's worth a try.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, that was a very, that was an issue that was very sort of tangible for me.
Yeah.
Like I know what it's like when I'm not chewing my fingernails, right?
Hmm.
So if there's a thing that is as tangible for you, like a habit or a specific challenge, it's worth giving a crack because it's just a reframing thing. And your point about, I was going to pick you up on that when you said, um, well, if I had all the answers, then I wouldn't be here. But then you kind of elaborated and said, well, no, well, how can we fix that then? So that's I could have fast tracked to that one myself, but
Yeah.
actually, in my experience, I've found that a lot of the time I do have the answers. I just don't realize that I have the answers. And then
Hmm.
the art of the therapist or even the coach in some instances is to help you realize that you got the answers.
Hmm.
But I would have the same reaction as you did to that. Like, well, what's the solution to that then? Can we, can we at least have a discussion first, guys?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I mean, equally, I appreciate that. I'm really lucky that we have that benefit at all. And it is, I misspoke. I mean, it is more of a professional coach, but I mean, you can talk to them about other things outside of work. So, I mean, there is a therapy element to it. But yeah, no, I'll look into it. That is, having heard your experience, it might be something that can help. So, I'm sure many people listening, and there will be many, I'm sure, will feel the same way.
Yeah, I hope so. It's just doing something about it, isn't it? It's not putting it off.
Mhm.
That's the thing that I'm taking from 2025. I'm finishing that the year on a just get shit done. Just do it. Don't stop adding to the long list of shit that you might do at some point.
Mhm.
Actually doing it is far more useful than adding it to a list.
Yeah, let's get some merch done. Hashtag GSD, get shit done, get the t-shirts done.
Yeah.
Add that to your list.
Yeah. Funnily enough, good enough chats merch is on that list. One day.
Hoodies, hoodies, hats, ties.
Mugs.
Yeah, sharp. I know we both don't like it, but sharp up networking, head to toe in good enough chats merch.
Yeah. Oh, so what do you do? Well,
I'm a postman. I just stole somebody's marriage. Um, well, the final question, and it kind of feels like we're already touching on it anyway, but if there was someone that came to you today that was having a similar challenge, what's the most important thing you feel that they could do?
in the short term, the most important thing that they can do is share the burden of it. And I'm saying share the burden very deliberately because a lot of people don't do it because they think that they're burdening someone else with it.
Hmm.
But and to use the most extreme example, if it's the choice between someone needing to listen to a problem that you've got versus someone having to attend your funeral because you've decided that you can't take it anymore and that taking your own life is the only way out of it,
Hmm.
you know what option makes the most sense.
Yep.
Right? So you don't need to necessarily start by sharing it with a professional. If you've got employee assistance programs, if you've got those kind of benefits with your work, just use it, for God's sake, just use it. If you don't have access to that, go to your GP. If you can't get into the GP, speak to a friend or
Hmm.
someone in your family. Just start the conversation somewhere. They won't have all the answers. They shouldn't have all the answers. But if they can be there to just hear you so that you can lighten the load for yourself a little bit just by starting to put it out into the world, not just keeping it between your ears. Um, that's the most important starting point for anybody because this stuff is normal. This stuff is widespread, unfortunately. But there are so many other people that have been through stuff who would be able to hear that with compassion, with empathy, to help you. And then I think, and this is, I've struggled with the way to phrase this, um, but hopefully it makes sense because I struggle with it because I don't want it to sound negative.
Hmm.
Um, when you start that first step of your recovery, and that's what it is. Talking about this stuff is that first step. Your recovery is not going to be linear. Um, there are going to be bumpy patches along the way, and there are going to be difficult times, and there will be times where you feel like you have just fallen so far back that you're almost where you started. But keep the faith and know that you are not anywhere near where you started. You
Hmm.
probably made huge strides forward, but right now it's tough. And you need to be prepared for those rocky patches, but you also need to be prepared to stay the course because every single day that you are here, that you exist, even if you feel like you are not actively making progress at that point in time, is progress in itself.
Hmm.
And if you can start to build around you a network of people who can just be there to answer a message or to have a chat or go for a walk with, or even for them to just check in on you every now and again, right? That is longer term, that is going to be so valuable to you. Come out of the isolation, stop being the guy in the shed in the corner of the garden who's trying to avoid everybody, and come out of that and let people help you, because you will need it. You cannot do it on your own. No
Hmm.
one is an island apart from the Isle of Man. Um, but it's so important that people take the first step, but it's also important to realize that there isn't an end game. There is just the rest of your life and the journey that it takes you on. and
Mhm.
staying on that journey is the best possible thing you can do,
Mhm.
regardless of where it takes you and how difficult it is to keep going at times.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And a lot of that resonates with me. I think when I realized that there isn't there isn't that end game. Like, I mean, on the episode that I did, obviously I talked a lot about struggles around like my weight, etc. And there's when you're going through something like that, people assume, right, okay, well, you'll have like a target weight or something to hit. But like you never get to a point where you're like happy with how you look or how you feel, and you'll just keep going, or you'll hit what you thought was going to be fine, and then you still feel like shit. And then it manifests in another way and you just go backwards. And yeah, 100% the end game, they're not really being one, and it just being a continuous process of hopeful progress is the right way to look at it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, was there anything else that you wanted to cover off today?
Well, yeah. I mean, the obvious thing is to say thank you for doing this, Ben. Um,
I
it,
wasn't fishing for that, but I'll take it.
no, we'll do take it. These, so these are, if for anybody that has never heard one of these before that has got through to the end of this, thank you as well. But they're unscripted conversations, and you don't always know how they're going to pan out. But I had a feeling that asking Ben to host this one would be a good idea, and yeah, I was right. I really appreciate you taking the time out to do this and reverse the roles on it. So thank you to you. You're a good man.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, I hope I helped, not hindered the conversation, but
100% you did.
really appreciate it. Um, well, on that note, I guess all that's left to say really is thank you for having me, one, and two, thank you for everyone that's been listening or watching today. Um, if you have been and have enjoyed anything that's been said has resonated with you, or you're going through anything yourself, please do like, share, and subscribe on whichever and however many platforms you find good enough chats on. It will just help with pushing the message further to other people that are going through similar. So if you can take the time, please do.
Awesome stuff, mate. Thank you. And I'm going to chip in here and say thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for listening, hearing me out. Um, we are just about to take a short break on this, but if you're listening to this in the future, that will be academic. There are a host of other chats on this pod now. There are more than 3 dozen conversations covering a wide range of stuff: ADHD, autism, OCD, baby loss, bullying, burnout, a whole manner of different experiences that I hope are going to be really helpful for other people to hear when they need to hear them. So check those out as well. We'll be back early in 2026. It's 2025 still, isn't it?
It is, yeah, somehow.
Early in 2026 to add more conversations to the bank. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, and we'll be seeing you again soon. Cheers.